Live from the SABC's Auckland Park headquarters, good evening to you and welcome to this evening's edition of The Watchdog.
The narrative that the government is not caring. We are in fact coming up with these figures, not so much to demonstrate that we have paid some money, but also to demonstrate that we have actually been responsive from the first time that we were seized with these matters, and we continue to be responsive.
Since taking on the Marikana operations, I was pleased earlier this year to announce a 4 billion rand investment in extending the life.
Stung by criticism that 9 years after the Marikana massacre, they are simply not doing enough to help victims and their loved ones, the government and the mining company both moved to set the record straight today. The Solicitor General is here to give details of payments the state says it's made over the years, while Sibanye Stillwater's Themba Nkosi is on standby to account for what his company has done. Widows, their lawyers, worker leaders and victims' rights advocates are also part of this evening's program, which starts right now. Conspicuously absent from all conversations that have been taking place over the past few days, the government has today decided to brief the media on what it has been doing to help Marikana victims and their dependents.
The quantum of the amount that has been paid to date is 69,083,005. So that is 69,083,000 rands. And that amount has been paid. It is confirmed as having been paid. If you were to invoke the once and for all rule, you would actually accept that having paid this, the just under 70 million rand on behalf of the 35 families, the matter would have been resolved. But not so, because the Socio-Economic Rights Institute came back to us and said it needed what it calls general and constitutional damages for and on behalf of all the 36 claimants. We then said we are prepared as government, as the state, to pay to all the claimants that were represented by the Socio-Economic Rights Institute an additional 500,000 rand without prejudice, of course. That claim for the general and constitutional damages is still in court, but we needed to offer 500,000 rand pay family. And that offer has been rejected. I think it must be placed on record that that offer has been rejected. In fact, a counter offer was that they needed 1.5 million per each of the claimants that they were representing. And that is where the stalemate is.
The Justice Department's Solicitor General, Fedzisani Pandelani, now joins us live to speak to some of the issues that were raised during the time he was addressing that media conference. Person will also be joining us a little later on is one of the victims' lawyers, Advocate Dalim Bofu, who at a commemorative rally yesterday gave an update on all the legal processes pending and finalized. Let's start with you, Mr. Solicitor General. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if I heard you correctly, you're saying that the state, having paid 70 million, you would have thought that the matter would have been resolved, which suggests to someone who's listening that you, from the state's point of view, you felt that the amount was adequate.
Thanks, Will, for having me, and good evening to everybody that is listening to the show. On the facts that are before me, I would not actually say that the 70 million rand would have been adequate. Otherwise, we would not have been reaching out to say, in relation to the head of damages, that is in fact captioned general and constitutional damages, we are willing to give each family $500,000 rand, or each claimant $500,000 rand. So what I was actually indicating was that we do realize that money can never be enough, but there are, however, limitations to what we can do. And that is why we have actually pegged and offered an additional $500,000 rand to the claimants that were represented by Siri.
Okay, let's try and simplify it for the sake of our viewers and, of course, within the time limitations that we all have. Let's start with the category of, let's go through each and every one of the categories. The first one is loss of support, emotional shock, and suffering. And for that, the state has paid how much?
The claims that I'm referring to that falls under the category of Siri is for people that are deceased. Now, you can never have or quantify emotional shock for someone that has actually passed on.
Okay.
So those are dependent claims, loss of support from the records that I have.
But emotional shock and suffering also falls within that category.
It cannot be for somebody, that category of a claim cannot be for the person that has already been buried.
Okay.
The only thing that in fact remains is loss of support for those that are surviving.
Yes.
So let's take out the emotional shock and suffering, because you don't talk about emotional shock and suffering for someone that is no longer there.
Okay. So let's talk then about the deceased. The state is offering, what, 500,000 per family, per person. Which has been rejected on the basis that it is not sufficient.
Yeah, let's disambiguate that issue, Mr. Mboko. The fact of the matter is, Siri lodged about 36 claims.
Yes.
All of which were for loss of support, right?
Yes. Yes.
Meaning there is a breadwinner in this family that has unfortunately lost his life.
Yes.
As a result of the unfortunate incident, right?
Yes.
And so from that category, loss of support, cumulatively, if you quantify the amount for the 35 claimants that we were able to pay, but the one that in fact I've not spoken about, we've paid just under 70 million rand.
Yes.
So once you in fact say loss of support stands alone. It cannot be infused with emotional shock and suffering, because you cannot have both of those heads of damages in one. One has to go. So either you claim for emotional shock and suffering if you are still alive, if you have been injured and have got certain, you are suffering certain consequences arising from the incident that had occurred. But once you say, my husband passed on, and as a result, I'm not going to be able to sustain either myself and the kids or any other person, then there is a process of quantification. That quantification led to the state paying cumulatively to those 35 claimants just under 70 million rand.
Okay, 69,083,005 is the exact amount that you paid, right?
That's for the loss of support.
Okay, and then in addition, the families have claimed for general and constitutional damages, and for which the state offered R500,000 each.
We are offering R500,000 for each of those 35 families, yes.
Okay, and then that has been rejected. The families say R1.5 million each.
That's true.
Okay. And now that matter is still pending. That
leg of the matter is still pending, yes. We
but you've paid the...
actually R500,000.
Yes.
There's not been any communication to us other than a rejection of the offer.
Okay. And that, of course, is in addition to the almost 70,000 that you have already paid, you say?
70 million, yes.
70 million, yes.
The 69 that you referred to, that is over and above, yes.
Okay. Now, you are then have the parties at any point come together to whether to meet halfway or to improve your offers? Has that happened?
Ideally, that is what should be happening. You will realize that I come into this space when these matters have been playing out for quite some time.
Okay.
And notwithstanding that fact, you still have. There is no one particular person that cannot actually be aware of the Marikana incident. Mm-hmm. And even sitting in this position now, I can't actually assume otherwise.
Okay.
And that is why. That offer that has been made and has been rejected has not been formally retracted by the state.
Okay.
What had happened is, as opposed to coming to sit, around a table, there is now a parallel process that in fact has started, where a letter is now written to the presidency. So you reject the offer, we have not retracted it, then there is a suggestion that is actually being made to the presidency to say, this is how we believe you can deal with this issue. We go back to them and actually try to establish the legal metrics under which that scheme of arrangement could actually be accommodated. We are still waiting. So we are waiting for two things. We're waiting for notice so that we can deal with the issue of the offer and the sufficiency thereof. That is the R500,000. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, we are also awaiting to be told as to this scheme of arrangement, does it in fact negate the issue of the offer? Is now something else that in fact needs to be tackled. So all of these issues could actually be dealt with if we were to sit around the table. But the fact of the matter is we are in fact seized with these matters.
Okay. Let's talk now about the emotional shock and suffering. What has happened there?
If you were to look at what you call remove those that in fact, because we are talking about one category of matters that are being dealt with by Siri.
Yes.
And if you were to accept that loss of support is on the one side, and I think some of your panelists will agree, the emotional shock and suffering would generally have to be categorized as a separate claim. Now, you would, in fact, invariably argue that family members themselves are claiming for emotional shock and suffering. But it can't be by the same group of people that are being represented by Siri.
Okay.
And so, in order to get around the issue, you will then deal with it in accordance with what you call general damages and constitutional damages. Mm-hmm. That is where we are. That is where the 500,000 rand offer stands. That is where it resides, properly contextualized.
Okay. Right. Now, unlawful arrests and detentions. What have you done there?
All right. I think what we needed to do, because you started off with Siri. Siri didn't actually deal with all those other matters for the record.
Siri only dealt with matters where there is loss of support, loss of a breadwinner in the family. Now, those that are dealing with, unlawful arrest, detention are other claimants.
Okay.
Now, I've actually outlined in the press conference that there are 3 law firms that are dealing with those matters. Number one, colleagues from Maluleke and Simang are dealing with those claims.
Tata and
Tata attorneys are dealing with those claims. And there is the other Nkome attorneys are dealing with those claims. And as you might have heard, in relation to matters that Nkome attorneys are dealing with, we have already paid for all of those heads of damages, almost 97 million, right? That, in fact, falls under the category of unlawful arrest, detention, pain and suffering for those that are survivors of the Marikana incident.
Okay.
And when you go to matters that Tata attorneys and Maluleke and Simang are dealing with, we have said we have made offers of settlement. But those offers of settlement, of course, in their very nature, are confidential. And you cannot actually put those things in the public spectrum because those are still issues that are subject to, us trying to find it.
Okay.
There's not been a rejection of our offers, and for that reason, I cannot actually talk to them as I would with the 500,000 rand that we've made to Siri, and that one has been rejected.
Okay. Now, Advocate Mpofu, at the commemorative rally yesterday, you gave an update on all these legal processes, what was pending, what had been finalized, where there were some problems, and how you hoped to proceed. Thus, the Solicitor General's report, which was given in the form of a media briefing this afternoon, compare or contradict what you put forward yesterday?
Thank you, Vuyo. No, I think that, well, firstly, let me just say that I sympathize with my colleague there because, as he says, he has not dealt with these matters. And I suspect he was just thrust into a press conference because of people who were fearing the political fallout of the 9 years of trying to get some compensation from the state. No, I think that what has happened is that there is so much confusion and obfuscation in the report that was given by this afternoon. And part of that relates to trying to cover up some of the facts, but also part of it just comes from using language that is complicated. I mean, the once and for all rule, the counter offers and this, that, and the other, all that is meaningless. What we reported to the public is the following. And to that extent, the reports are the same, save for one or two exceptions, which I will explain just now. We said there are three categories of people, and I'm sure my colleague will concur with this, that it comes to the same issue. One, the first category are the people called arrested persons, of which he says that there were 253 people who were paid. And we said yesterday when we gave the report, the arrested people have all been paid out. In fact, even last year we gave that same report, that those people have been paid. There are one or two exceptions which they called in their press conference glitches or whatever, and they said I think there were 11 people. Yeah, but put that aside. Generally, we can say that the arrested people, 253 of them were paid out. And that accounts for what he says 97 million, which we can round it off to, let's say, it's 100 million. The reason, I explained this yesterday at the meeting, the reason that amount sounds so high is simply because these people were many, but none of those people were paid. The average payment was something like 386 1,000. Anyone can work it out. 97 million divided by 253, the average is 386. Some were paid slightly less, some were paid slightly more. And that's the category that has been paid out. So let's put that aside. Category number 2 are the deceased people, which we don't represent, but because I was going to give the report yesterday, I obtained a report from SERI, and that report is very simple. It says that loss of support has been paid out, which, as we said yesterday, but the other outstanding claims have not been paid out, and there's been no agreement in respect of that. Again, the sums are quite simple. 35 people, they say 69 million. Let's round it off and say 70 million. So average 2 million per family. So that's all that the state says has been paid. Now, if you look at last year, I think it was March last year, Bekitele made a report that the state had paid 170 million or something like that. This is the same amount that was reported today, as if it is news. Nothing has actually moved since then. Again, as usual, there will be a few exceptions. For example, there was the person who was represented by the Vets Law Clinic, who is not part of SERI or part of the attorneys who work with me. The report, I cannot confirm or deny that, because that's the one person who was represented, if you remember, by my colleague Bezos at the Marikana Commission. So his family was dealt with separately. Yeah. So that's what has happened there, which is that those people have been partly paid, which is what we said yesterday. Then the third category, Vuyo, is very simple. It's the injured, seriously injured persons, such as Mr. Magidwana, who spoke at the commemoration yesterday. Those people have not been paid at all. And again, there's one case, I think, of a Mr. I've just forget the surname, which was done in March. And I've just established that that matter was settled. Again, let's call it one of the exceptions. So in brief terms, I want to ask my learned colleague there if he agrees with that categorization. Category 1, arrested persons paid. Forget the small glitches. Category 2, deceased families paid, loss of support, but not any other outstanding claims which are disputed. 3, injured persons not paid because of reports outstanding and what have you. Again, I don't want to get into that. And that it's as simple as all that. We don't have to bring all these legal terms and so on. And what we said yesterday was that it is regrettable that the most seriously injured, which includes Mr. Magidwana and a gentleman called Mr. Matwansi, who actually has a bullet lodged in his head, those people have not received a cent for 9 years. And this so-called caring government has not found it within its heart to pay those people, number one. Number 2, the caring government, let's put money aside. The caring government should have then at least done what we call the non-pecuniary or the non-monetary issues, such as apology, monument, declaration that this thing will not happen again. That doesn't involve any money, any medical report. Why did the caring government not do those for 9 years? And the things that actually do not even need a cent to be implemented. And that's the report. And to that extent, the report is the same as theirs, except that theirs is obfuscating and bringing in legalese and all sorts of complications. It's a very simple matter that those 3 categories are as I've reported, and I'd like him to just confirm that. Mr.
Pandelani?
No, thank you very much, Vuyo. I think we need to. I agree with my colleague to an extent, and what my office sought to do. And let's just actually be very clear. I'm not actually here going to talk about politics, and I think my colleague here, in all honesty, knows that I'm confined in what I can actually talk about. I'm talking about litigation of these matters. I'm not into the realm of actually justifying political aspects, and that is not my mandate.
He's nodding. He's agreeing with you.
Arrested is out. Arrested is out. There's no contention there. And in fact, the narrative that has been there, unfortunately, I never actually got to listen to him when he was giving the speech yesterday. Maybe we might have had quite a number of issues where we agree upon. And I'm operating from the basis of the records that I have. And the statement has not actually sought to deal with the issues that he might have reported yesterday in another forum. So the deceased people have been paid. So there is no question about that. But you would have noticed during the interview when another question was posed to the extent that why only 36 and not 44. So if you agree with me that on account of loss of support, all the 44 would have been accounted for, then we don't have a problem. The arrested individuals, we don't have a problem. But also, let's also agree that there are lawyers involved in these matters. My colleague and I cannot actually litigate through the press. Mm-hmm. When last have they approached any office of the state attorney, or at least my office, to say, let's sit down, let's deal with these issues? I understand the other social things that he's referring to. That also does not constitute a part of my mandate. Mm-hmm. A part of my mandate is to, in fact, meaningfully deal with this litigation. And of course, him and I can sit with the lawyers around a table and try to deal with all these aspects. Of course, there is one concession that is being made. When you are making a claim for personal injuries, loss of amenities of life, and related aspects, you need to be able to quantify. So what is paid to X can never be equivalent to what is paid to Y, given the nature and extent of the injuries. And for that reason, where reports are outstanding, I've actually also indicated today, and if he's working with Maluleke Msimang, I've said we've made offers of settlement in relation to all the clients that they are in fact representing. Meaning from where I sit, they've satisfied everything else that is required to quantify and come to an amount. And we are prepared to say, here's the offer. We can sit and talk about the rands and cents, and that is another exercise. Now, in relation to matters that our colleagues, attorneys, are dealing with, and if he's also associated with them, I've actually made a report, and I think it is up to him to dispute the fact that I'm saying Maluleke Msimang has given us all the reports that in fact are required to quantify. We are ready to sit down with him. Tata attorneys equally have given us reports, but those reports are 80% of what in fact they've intimated is required to justify any settlement. But we are prepared to deal with the 80%, and as soon as the other 20% is offered to us, we sit down and talk. Now, I think Advocate Mpofu will be the first person to in fact say that there's never been that approach before today's press statement, owing to the fact that there is that aspect of us saying you are the litigant, you are the primary person that must be pursuing a matter. And we are sitting and waiting for all these things to be brought to us so that we can be able to finalize this matter. The issues about apologies and things like those, in all honesty and humility, I think I cannot deal with because it does not constitute a part of my mandate.
Okay.
Thank you, Vio.
Okay, got you on that one, on the last point. Advocate Mpofu, quick last word, including whether you'll be taking the Solicitor General up on his offer of sitting down and ironing out the outstanding issues.
Yeah, well, again, let me start by sympathizing with him because he obviously doesn't have a clue of what has been happening. He tells us that we should not do this through the media, but he's the one who called a press conference. And we are supposed to believe that he just called the press conference on the 17th of August, irrespective of what happened yesterday. But, I mean, anyone who believes that really needs their head to be examined. The issue is this. if they genuinely wanted to deal with this matter, they should have, before they ran to the press, called all these attorneys and make sure that the information is the same. For example, he says Tlhahla attorneys has got 80% outstanding. That is just factually not true. I am in possession of a letter written by the state attorney to Tlhahla attorneys, which said, all your documents are in, we will pay you by the end of June. Or we will settle the matters by the end of June. I'm sorry, not pay you by the end of June. Settle your matters by the end of June. That has not happened. So I don't know where this 80% story comes from. But again, as I say, maybe he's just been given the wrong information. The third issue is that the claims for apologies and all these other things are not politics. I don't know what he's talking about. Those are claims that are in the legal papers that are in his possession. One of the claims, for example, they were asked this question in the press conference. They didn't answer it. There's a claim which has the president of the country in his personal capacity and against the company and then against the government of South Africa. That claim is the claim that constitutes constitutional damages, apology, declaration that it will not happen again, and I'm doing this from memory, a monument to be built. That's what we reported yesterday. That's not politics, that's law. That's in the particulars of claim that have been served upon them in the state attorney's office. Okay. Then the last point is that is the point that I made, that this is the same so-called announcement that Bekicele made last year in March. So I don't know what it is that they are going on about. As far as the injuries are concerned, he's quite right. The injuries, obviously, if somebody lost an arm and another one lost a leg, they're not going to claim the same amount. And that is why those claims have to go through doctors and what have you. But the point we were making is very simple. The government accepted liability for all those people, whether they lost arms or legs or whatever, in January 2016. It is unconscionable that 5 years later, those claims have not been paid, because some of those people have died, some have left, and some are getting into very serious situations. And the current government that he claims to represent has not even paid those people a portion of their claims. So that's the factual situation. And there's no spinning around this thing. It's those three categories, with, as I said, with a few exceptions of the vets thing, the 3 or 11. He says 11, my information is that 3 of the arrested people, because there were some problems with ID numbers or whatever, and that's what he called glitches. I accept that. But as far as the injured and the seriously injured persons, those people have not received their money. I've also been told, in fairness to him, that one of the matters that was settled was actually, I think, paid out in June or July or whatever. So let's put that.
That was 21st of June.
Yes, that is the
Metro.
Yes. So I'm assisting with another assistance that I can give you. That confusion about the 44 and so on is not something that you must answer the way you answered it. It's a very simple matter. The 44 includes the people, some of the people who died, like the police officers and the security guards, and some of the people who died, the 10 people who died before the 16th of August. Those people are not the responsibility of the state. So your answer should be very simple. So, for example, the security guards were not killed by the police. So they could not, if there's a claim for them, they would not be claimed against you.
I think you will have to contextualize that question arose from a journalist. It didn't arise from my report. So I actually had to deal, because they wanted the number. Where is the missing number? So anyone that is
fair enough. No. I accept that. Yeah. But I'm telling you that your answer was wrong, because you said that 44 are somewhere in those numbers. Those the missing persons, as you call them, who are not part of your 36, let's say 8 people who are not your responsibility, who either died, the people who killed them are unknown, or they died in the other skirmishes, or they are actually policemen who are members of the state, and I don't know how those get processed. So you don't have to take responsibility for something that doesn't fall under you. The 36 people were the people who were killed by the police. That's why they claimed against the state. But the police cannot just, if someone gets killed at night by unknown persons, and then you claim against the state. Okay. So that I'm assisting you to say that that question you should have dealt with that way. So this thing is very simple, Vuyo. Okay. Apart from the exception here and there, Category 1, paid. Category 2, partly paid. Category 3, not paid. And that's it. 9 years later, full stop. And that's it.
Okay. We've seriously run out of time. Unless, Mr. Pandelani, you have something that, a factual correction that you need to make, I'm going to wrap it here. I've taken much more time on this, precisely because we wanted clarity than I should have taken. So I've got to thank both of you for sorry, did you say yes?
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Vuyo, for giving us this opportunity. But at the end of the day, I think Advocate Impofu knows the concept of dominus litis. We wait for a provision of all the documents. I'm happy that he's saying that Tata Attorneys has actually given 100% of the documents. I will check that. And of course, I again repeat that we cannot litigate through these things. The fact that one had to actually give these statistics is because outside of whatever he might have said, the narrative out there, and that is outside of whatever Becky Kelly might have said, the narrative out there is that nothing has been paid. No matter has moved. And I'm happy that he's making a concession as he is making, because we move forward.
No, man. No.
Okay, General, I'm going to have to stop you.
I'm telling you, this was said even last year.
Okay.
No, I'm not disputing that. What I'm getting at is, there is a narrative, not from you.
Okay.
You must actually also remember that you are not the only person that is speaking on this issue. If you have trolled all social networks and related aspects, you will see what the narrative is. So it is wrong to actually think that the press conference was in fact in defense of whatever you might have said. There are quite a number of other narratives out there that seek to project a wrong image. And I'm saying, I'm happy that you are conceding that to some extent there are...
but who's conceding what? I'm not conceding anything. I'm telling you that you have not paid the injured people. That is a fact. You have paid part of the deceased families. That's a fact. And you have paid the arrested people in full. It's not conceding what? Conceding what?
Can I finish? There are people that don't even believe that anything has been in relation to Category A and Category B of the matters.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you to both of you. I mean, for your time this evening. I wish we really had more time, because we really needed clarity. I mean, for so many years, there's been very little coming through by way of clarity as to who has given who, or where the holdup was and what was going to happen next. But thanks to both our guests, the Justice Department Solicitor General Fedzisani Pandelani, and of course one of the victims' lawyers, Advocate Dali Mpofu. Time for a quick break. When we come back, we look at the labor and social issues of this whole saga. What has been happening over the past 9 years? We speak to a representative of the mining company, as well as a leader of the union that is represented there. Don't go away. Let's welcome now from Sibanye-Stillwater, Themba Nkosi, and joining him is Trade Union AMCU President Joseph Matunjwa. Also joining us is Yasmin Suka, who is a former commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I'm going to start with you, Yasmin, precisely because we've just come out of that conversation about reparations. And we make all of assumptions when we hear the word reparations. I mean, for others, and especially on the back of that briefing where the Solicitor General went through like a long list of categories of people who had actually claimed, including relatives. Now, what is the importance, the one single biggest important reason why we have this, and it has been happening for years the world over? Hi, Yasmin, can you hear me? Please unmute yourself.
Yes, I can. I have. Thank you very much, and good evening to your listeners. I have to say, when I listened to the Solicitor General, I was a little confused because I think that what he was speaking about was multiple claims that have been made by different bodies on behalf of individual victims. And I think what he was referencing really was different compensation claims. And I think that where that's problematic is that it's being done on a very individualistic, ad hoc basis, when probably the best way of dealing with this would have been to think about it from a reparations perspective, which would acknowledge that, in fact, the state has a legal obligation to repair what has happened to victims because of the violations they were both directly responsible for and, of course, those that they failed to prevent. And in a sense, what reparations does, it's a form of recognition for both victims and our society that what it's going to do is really address the root causes of past violations to ensure that it never happens again. And compensation actually is only one element of that, because reparations consists of both compensation, it consists of individual rehabilitation, and the third element is the question of satisfaction, and of course the symbolic element as well. And what we're really talking about is the need, both under international human rights law and domestic law, to ensure that victims have equal and effective access to justice, and that what happens to them is both adequate, it's effective, and it's prompt. But more importantly, it's about access to information concerning what happened to them, but also about reparations. And quite frankly, after that press briefing, I was thoroughly confused, because I think he kept talking about the fact that he was confusing, I think, a whole range of aspects, because he referenced the fact that they had settled claims with SERI, but they were still receiving other claims. It was more money that was being requested. And the one thing we know is that people need to be treated equally, promptly, and with respect. Mm-hmm. And so when you do it in this kind of piecemeal fashion, without taking into account the views of victims about what's important for them, then I think you're going to go down the wrong path. Okay. But above all, I think there's a singular step that's absolutely missing, and that's the question of an apology. And an apology by the head of state about what happened 9 years ago to the people in our country, perpetrated really by agencies of the democratic state. Okay. Significantly, this should have required that at least the president should have visited. At least he should have said to people, I feel your pain, I acknowledge the wrongdoing, and my government will do everything possible to ensure that what happened to you is acknowledged, that you are recognized as victims, and that the consequences of these violations, the harm that you have suffered, will be repaired. Okay. To do it in this fashion is a violation in and of itself, and really not acceptable.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Yasmin Suka, who is a former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner. Now, Themba Nkosi, I watched quite a number of inputs that were made this morning, and from your board of directors to your CEO, everyone seemed to be saying you're doing, or you're trying at least your utmost best to do exactly. On your part, to do exactly what Yasmin Suka was saying needs to be done over the year. You've come up with a renewal program, and you are dealing with all the attendant labor and social issues that arose out of this situation. Very briefly on your side.
Thanks, Avio, and good evening to your listeners. Good evening to the colleagues, Mr. Matunjo and Yasmin. Avio, as you know, we were not in Marikana in 2012, and we cannot walk in and pretend like we've got all the solutions. All we are trying to do is to try and convince stakeholders so that we get into the room, we deal with all the atrocities of the past, and Yasmin has qualified them correctly, and ensure that within the process that we've embarked upon, which we call the Letsema process, we talk about healing for all stakeholders. We engage, get into a circle of conversations to ensure that all the views are accommodated. We find common ground, and certainly, as we have known historically, the Marikana perspective has got all sorts of views from all walks of life, from civil society, from a labor perspective, from religious organizations, and all the interested and affected parties. So when we spoke last year, we spoke about seeking justice, and I think that was also informed by the fact that ever since we've listened to the Marikana narrative, all the concerned people have spoken about justice for the widows. There was an angle around Bapuba Mokhale and how a lot of millions went missing there. And we do believe that for us to have sustainability and stability where we operate, we need to ensure that we've got functional and capacitated institutions such as municipalities, as well as the traditional authorities and the traditional council.
Okay.
So all we're saying basically with our renewal journey is to ensure that all stakeholders are engaged. We've engaged with the widows. We've been engaging with the organized labor in Marikana. We might be coming from different perspectives in terms of how we want to move forward, but moving forward, we are committed to do. And certainly we will make mistakes along the way. We learn from them, but we want to bring about dignity in terms of Marikana, ensuring that what happened doesn't happen again, and have an inclusive process that looks at restitution as well as finding justice for all victims of Marikana, and all a point of emphasis being, we know that the 34 victims have been taken care of by the state one way or the other, but we have got also the 10 families that are still seeking the same kind of justice as well as restitution. Okay.
Mr. Matunjwa, from where you sit as workers, are you feeling it? Are you feeling the change that Sibanye Stillwater says it has brought about after, buying the mine from Lonmin?
Good evening to your viewers and to your listeners. Budvuyo, let me start by saying, to know the difference, you need wisdom. And wisdom comes from God. Doesn't come from any higher learning institution. That is what I want to start from. So if you don't have wisdom, you cannot know the difference. Stillwater, Sibanye Stillwater, I even have a lump in my throat when I talk about this company. The first time they came in, they threatened the same widows that they purport to support and taking care of. The same Sibanye was the one that they are not buying Massacre, they are buying Lonmin. The very same mine. The same company that Mr. Themba is representing recently was forcing 5 widows to clean male's toilet in one of their training center. And he laughed because he knows it. Forcing the widows, and then they were threatened if they don't wash those toilets, clean those toilets of the male, and then they will be transferred to the shaft. This is the very same Lonmin or Sibanye that was forcing the same Magitiwane, Comrade Nova, Comrade Madwansi to return back to their normal working place. As you understand, they cannot work. They cannot walk properly, but they were forced. After they were forced, we fought for them. The same people that they are claiming that they are supporting them, they want restoration and all those kind of things. And then all the empowerment that we brought into Bapoba Mohale, they terminated even some of the contractors, the black empowered companies, even before their contract expired. That's the same Lonmin. In buses, we empowered Bapoba Mohale, the bus transport, which was run by a white company. They've reduced their buses until they are actually crumbling as we speak. So this is the company that we are talking about. And moreover, the 16th of August, there was a massacre, which they call Marikana, is calling Marikana narrative. Others, they call it incident. Others, they call it a tragedy. What is it peculiar? What does the 17th of August? Why do they have a renewal on the 17th of August? It reminds me the apartheid at Flag Plus. In Flag Plus, after Eugene de Kock killed our brothers, our fathers, the following day they will have a braai. So what they are doing on the 17th, it coincides with what Reparations did. After 34 mine workers were killed, they called the police and congratulated them of them being responsible in executing their job. So why do they do a parallel commemoration after we had a commemoration on the 16th and we invited them and they set their own parallel commemoration? They are doing exactly. At the jog on the 17th is when the jog was closed down and everything happened. Let's update it. And on the 16th, they killed the workers. And the word that they use, saying renewal. Renewal is what? You are resuming what is being interrupted. We interrupted the white monopoly tendency. And the police, the state, and the white monopoly capital tried to killed workers because they were interrupting their tendency. And now they come in the media as if they are very clean, they are angels, they are coming from where? These are the people who are threatening to dismiss 10,000 workers. When they came in, they dismissed over 2,800 workers, the very same people.
Okay, Mr. Nkosi, we've seriously run out of time, but I have to ask you to respond because these are very specific and detailed allegations. What do you have to say for yourselves?
Anybody that has been following the story of Lonmin knows that when Sibanye got in, Lonmin was facing financial difficulties. The fact that when we got in, we have actually reduced the number of people that would have been naturally retrenched had the business not changed hands between Lonmin and Sibanye. The second part is we also have now announced that we are going to resuscitate the K4 project, investing 4 billion rands, creating about 4,500 jobs, which could not have been done had Sibanye not taken over Lonmin. And the third part is it is actually untrue that we terminated contracts of people without any commercial reason, because by law, those people would have taken us to court. Now, Mr. Machujwa needs to choose whether he's a business association or he represents labor, because commercial contracts have got certain termination clauses and certain legal recourse. So if we terminated anybody's contract commercially, that was unfair. Probably those people would have taken us on to actually seek a recourse. And then lastly, on Bapoba Mohale, we are serious about empowering Bapoba Mohale. Everybody knows, it's well documented that Bapoba Mohale lost money as a nation with a D account. We know that we had these businesses that Mr. Machujwa is talking about that have had no financial statements 5 years, that have had business opportunities from Lonmin at the time and Sibanye to the tune of 1.6 billion. if you go there right now today and you engage on a constructive basis with BAPO, they will tell you the processes that we brought into fore to try and assist to create governance and bring the capacity that is lacking at BAPO. And I think the issue of ladies cleaning toilets, I think I'm not going to comment to that. It's for Mr. Matunjwa to choose how he actually chooses selective truths when he speaks about things. And on the three people that he's mentioned, the three colleagues, Mr. Nova, Mr. Madwansi, and Madingwane, those people who have gone for assessments, and I think it's within our rights as an employer when an employee cannot present themselves to do a job, to check how they are doing, ensure that rehabilitation is happening. And in fact, for his information, some of those guys have told us that they actually want to return to work. We need to find appropriate placement programs. Now, in mining, there's a law.
I'll have to stop you now, Mr. Ngosi.
Fit for purpose assessments.
Can I respond to
I have to ask Mr. Ngosi.
Capital representative.
I have to ask.
Putting words in my, in my mind. I'm not a business person. I'm not representing the oppressors of this country. You guys, you were preparing another massacre in 2019 in your gold sector. Now you come to the media and mislead the nation as if you are the representative of the oppressed people. Don't come and talk nonsense in the media. Please don't mislead.
Gentlemen, I'm going to ask us to stop it right there. We've seriously run out of time, and sincere apologies to our other guest, Yasmin Suka. This is where we're going to end it. That was the Watchdog for this evening. To join us again tomorrow evening, same time. Have a good night.